I'm Curtin Davina. This is Timur Hussein. You're watching GameSpot, and we have two very special guests here. You may have heard of them, but at least have heard of the game they've made. Maciej and Mateusz. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure for you.
Thanks for having us.
Good. It's very good to have you here.
We didn't know you were here, and then we were told you were here, and we were like, we got to get them in ASAP. So
it was a secret.
Yeah, I got a message this morning.
As far as I know, we're not really here. None of us are really here. Or we're all experiencing a different form of reality at this moment.
Of course, you are the developers, Bloober Team, behind Silent Hill 2, which, for my money, one of the best games of last year. So, congrats. I mean,
thanks a lot.
What is it like for you to now be on the other side of that game? We ask all developers that, but some developers have more of a unique experience getting there than others, and I would say you are definitely one of them. What's it like?
Really weird. No, I mean, obviously, like when you work on something for such a long time as we did, like maybe at some point you stop believing that it's gonna end eventually. So you are kind of surprised when it does. It was, at least for me personally, the experience. But yeah, I'm super happy especially for the team, because I know that it was a huge success for them. And I'm not gonna lie, we lived in a pretty difficult environment for some time, ever since we released the review trailer. So we weren't sure how the fans are going to react to how the game looks and plays.
And we kind of knew that we have something special, and the game was special for us, and we really wanted to give it justice. At the same time, we also understood that there are fans that are like really into the game, and we didn't want to mess up. So yeah, reception was great. So we are very happy.
I imagine, as you mentioned, it was during that first reveal trailer, and I'm sure I can imagine it was pretty difficult, not having an immediate sort of like approval of it. But I think something that you did quite effortlessly was it felt like you were still listening, and that you were still attentive, and that you weren't just like buckling and still trying to make sure that like you were where you wanted to do what was right, and you made changes based on that. Like what was that like? Like did you expect to reveal that trailer and then have to feel like, okay, we have to address some of this, and like where do you draw the line and what you choose to address and what you don't?
Oh, it's always good to have like the first impressions from the player's side, because we are kind of living in a box, in a way, right? Doing the production. Although we have all of those sessions with external players to get the feedback, etc. And like many of those complaints or things that people think that it will be good to improve, we already started doing. But obviously, with that kind of trailers that are happening like pretty early, you have like the very sometimes rough material, right? You need to create like those first cutscenes while the production or the state of production is not prepared yet for that kind of moment, because the lighting comes last, right?
It's easy to forget that there are people making these games, like people who generally care about what they're doing. And we have you two here, but you are obviously representatives to a degree of the studio you work for and the team you work for. So I'd love to, if you can, open up about it. Like, what was the kind of mood and feeling after you had that one trailer where a lot of people kind of were very critical of it? For us, it's easy to be like, and I'll admit, I looked at it and I was like, I don't know if this is working for me. I wasn't on the internet sending you evil messages or anything, but like a lot of people were pushed to do that. And it's easy to move on from it because there's a good game now. But for me, I think it's important to look back at it and maybe learn something and try and take away some reminder that it's humans and people who care trying to make this.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what the mood was like? Did it affect you guys? Did it help you bounce back? There must have been people who were like, this sucks. Like, how do because someone told me a thing that I was making was awful. I'd be like, forget it. I don't want to do anything with it. Get out of it, I'm off.
I mean, it was definitely hard, right? Right after the review trailer, and we've kind of knew it's gonna be like that. So we've been preparing also internally for that, because obviously, like of course, setting aside people who are very outspoken, maybe too outspoken on the internet, like it is understandable that people would have fears about us making that game at that time, because everything we did before was quite different, right? Like we never did TPP camera, we never did combat before, so people could be afraid right? At that point, because it's a very beloved franchise. It has massive following. So it is understandable. Obviously, again, like maybe some of those comments were going a bit too far. That's another topic for probably another time. But yeah, I mean, we've been preparing for that. I was also, I mean, us together, we were encouraging the team and telling them that, after working on the game for like 3 years at the time, we need to remember that we are the experts in the field. Like we basically live and breathe this title for the last 3 years, right? So
and for some people, like their lifetime, right? Like you're like
exactly, yeah. Even before that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to kind of remind them that we really know what we're doing here. So we need to keep that mindset and not be discouraged, right?
One thing I'm always, as a survival horror freak, something I'm always really fascinated by is this circle that we were seeing with the genre. Like obviously the rise of it in the 90s, and then like it kind of faded away when there was an exhaustive amount of like Resident Evil clones or whatever you want to put it, or how you want to put it. And then we have this uptick in survival horror coming back again in the form that it kind of was in the 90s, where it was slow paced, it wasn't action oriented. And obviously we've had the Resident Evil remakes, but then we have the Dead Space remake, and then now we have the Silent Hill 2 remake. I think the Resident Evil remakes and Dead Space remakes, I think the Resident Evil remakes are more of like an evolution of what they were doing with the genre. But Silent Hill 2 is in an interesting place because it's adapted modern gameplay, obviously over the shoulder and like fixed camera angles. What is it like seeing this kind of like Ouroboros effect of the survival horror genre, and now your remake kind of stepping into a new place in that whole sphere of things, like this kind of reflection of the past and now the present?
I mean, I think it kind of mirrors, how things are in general, like how they work with fashion, for example. That fashion comes back every like 4
Everybody's dressing like they're from the 90s again.
Yeah,
Fucking hats
exactly.
are back in. Thanks God. Thank you for not putting one on James. I really appreciate that. Maybe, I mean, you could have other hats, but sorry.
I mean, I think it's great for the industry in general, because obviously survival horror works best when you play it solo, right? I mean, obviously there are multiplayer horror games, but they're kind of aiming for a different kind of experience, right? Yeah. And for survival horror, for creating this tension, atmosphere, terror that you feel when you play it, in the night with your headphones on, like solo experience is, I don't know if necessary, but it helps elevate this feeling. And like also in the current situation in industry, where more and more companies are thinking that maybe so like doing single player games is not the best idea. I think it's good to prove them otherwise.
Yeah,
Agreed.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm super happy that that we pulled it off with Silent Hill 2, and this might also open doors for other developers, right, in the future, who maybe will get chances just like we did for either remaking or creating new IPs, whatever it might be.
Kind of touching on that topic again, you were making this game for a really long time, so obviously you get to see that evolution happening. Was the game always going to be like this, and you noticed, the other games are kind of coming into what we were trying to do, or was there like an influence to it, and that you kind of like synchronize yourself to what people are enjoying and how survival horror has returned?
I think not necessarily, to be honest, because like in my opinion, the game, obviously we wanted to use the modern mechanics and modern, like view of the games in general, right? Like that's why we, we wanted to bring this, feeling of nostalgia, right, for the game, but we didn't want to use archaic mechanics or archaic, tools to do that. Like there are like the game is much deeper to explore than to, just copying mechanics and saying like that's the nostalgia feeling, right? So, yeah, so I think it was special enough to have like this feeling that like we are doing something that supposedly would be a little bit more unique. So obviously there are some references to the genre, etc. Like we are using the approach that was more tested, for example, like in specific area. But at the same time, we know that this is like a little bit more unique game, and we needed to treat it a little bit differently. And I don't remember that there was like a big shift during the production. I don't think so. We obviously changed things, like added mechanics, take it back and change some stuff. But the general vision for the game was intact through the whole production most of the time.
As we wrap this up, I mean, I want there's the one question I have is about fan theories. Because, I mean, it's Silent Hill
Here we go.
fans are a different breed.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Like, no, I more so, I really, it was the thing that your team did is in ways you've confirmed certain theories.
Oh.
Did we?
Did we? I don't know. Or maybe you've alluded or winked and whispered to other ones. I don't know. But I mean, I gotta ask. What is the process? Did you actually kind of look into some of these theories, these things that have never been confirmed?
Oh, we never looked to anything on the internet, right?
No,
never. No. There was
didn't do
just
any
one
research.
our own vision,
just
like what we want to
winged it.
do,
Yeah.
like how we feel about. No,
So the theory that James is actually on a bender and he's gonna wake up any moment from a horrible headache. That's like at a bar, like what the fuck was that? Thank you. I think
Yeah.
finally I was correct.
yeah, but to be serious, like obviously we were checking out all of that, and many times we've had like this, like very tricky situation when there is like some like very strong theories. For example, like James is looking at us like in the mirror, like during this first famous scene, etc. And we know from the original creators that no, like that wasn't the case because from their opinion, and I agree with that, it doesn't make any sense. Because why to break like the fourth wall when it's the game about James? He's looking to his soul like during these moments, so it doesn't make any sense to actually break that. It's not the game's not about that, right? So we had all of many things like this, and that was the change that we just we're sure that some people would be like, oh, like they don't understand, but we know like what we want to do. On the other hand, there are many theories that not necessarily was confirmed by the original creators, but we kind of wanted to keep them somewhere in the environmental storytelling to not kind of break the things that for some people might be important, and it's not necessarily like the main core of the story, but we still kind of kept it like in some places for them to enjoy their own vision of the games.
I want to be as sensitive as I can in asking this. That we talked about, the response to the game before and after, and we've just discussed like the cyclical nature of game development, and you are also in that cyclical nature, and you're kind of in a way back at the start now. With it was announced that you're working on another Konami project. Obviously, when the first time that happened, there was a response to it, and it was somewhat negative, and there was a lot of backlash. Cycle's gone around now where you've just announced where you're working on another game. You can't really talk about it. Have you looked at the response to that, and how does it compare to the first time you did it? Can you see like, they have more faith in us this time?
I mean, it's 180 degrees different, right? Like, obviously we saw the news because the internet was buzzing about it just after the news. So, I mean, this is a completely new starting point for us. Like, this is not something that we know, our team at least. This is not something that we know to also have a huge support from the community, which I think will be super beneficial and super helpful as we go through this next project. So I'm looking forward to it personally.
But at the same time, it doesn't change like that much our approach to it, right? Like it's kind of the same process. Like obviously we are happy that we have like a little bit more trust in the community to do specific things, but at the same time, like it's not like we would approach this game like completely different in a completely different way. It's the same process. We will go through it. We will try to prepare as much as possible, and just do the good game.
Well, good luck. I hope the next project is as good or better. I'm very excited to see it.
You knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, good job.
No pressure for whatever it is going
course.
forward. Just
Yeah,
show up to work.
genuinely great
Thank
job.
you very
Like it was one of my favorite games of the last year, and I think I'm going to probably replay it every year at this point. It's like Resident Evil 2 Remake, which I think is one of the best games ever made. I think Silent Hill 2 Remake sits right next to it now for me.
Thanks so much. And yeah, before we finish, like you said at the beginning, it's two of us here.
Yeah, there's a
It was
team.
All team
There's a
of
team,
developers,
totally.
People supporting the development.
Good job,
team
all
and
of you.
so on.
All of you, good job.
So yeah, huge shout out to everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, Maciej, Mateusz, thank you so much for being here. I'm Kurt Navina.
Thank you very much.
This is Timur Hussein. For all the cool stuff you want to know about,
Video
you know where to go. See ya.